Hey friends, family, this is kind of a weird video, I know. Single player MMO, that doesn't make sense. How can those even exist? But they actually do in one form or another. Basically, these are going to be massively multiplayer online games that you can in fact play mostly completely alone, or for a good majority of the game, or they have like their own single player campaign kind of built or tacked on to the MMO. You know, just one reason or another, you can play this game as if you do some mental gymnastics, you're totally playing it single player. Now, I've only got a few of these because it's kind of a weird list. I don't think anybody's done anything like this. I'm kind of unique and novel, so you should like, subscribe, and check out all my videos. But I'm just trying to share some unique stuff with you guys. So I think single player MMO, that's something a bit novel, a bit original. So if you guys want to see what I got for this list, well, let's get into it. Keep the hype alive. Let's jump into the 5. Okay, so the first game that I want to talk about, and I'm kind of ordering these based on how single player you can actually play them, and that's going to be Runescape. Runescape is making the list because of its Iron Man hardcore mode, essentially where it stops you from trading with other players, and it effectively locks you out of a lot of the MMO of the game. But it's only, so far down on the list, or it's only number 5, because you're still playing the MMO. Actually, even when just playing RuneScape and you are locked out of all those MMO mechanics, you're still in the world with everyone else. They can still affect you, and you can still affect them based on, if they're mining the iron that you want, or if you're taking the resources that they want, things like that as well. PvP is still enabled. Just don't die. Don't do it. Don't die. Iron Man is kind of rough in RuneScape, but it's still a game that also is enjoyable. That's also how I'm kind of ranking the list as well. In RuneScape, even if you just played Iron Man or otherwise, if you played the game with just the mindset of you just wanting to one and done the questing, I always mention this when I talk about RuneScape, but the questing is so good. The game is basically a comic book. It's hilarious, there's really interesting puzzles, and while a lot of the quests do directly involve working with other players, it's really possible to mostly play this game with a single player mindset. But at the same time, RuneScape, more unique than most MMO, even if you're trying to play alone, you're never alone. You're kind of just solo. You're always inside of the massive world. So, I mean, for a reason that makes it a good MMO, it forces it to be number 5. So, number 4 on the list, kind of weird because it's a sandbox open world MMO. That's Black Desert Online. And I think some people who haven't really gotten too deep in Black Desert might really be scratching their heads, but if you've really played Black Desert, you know how isolating of a game that really can be. A lot of the game has these really compartmentalized, hyper-focused, and very isolating sort of trade systems or life skill systems, where just a lot of the game is just really kept to kind of your player and the ecosystem of you versus the game instead of any player at all interacting with you. I mean, let alone, like, you can go into the open world and you can just grind for hours and hours without seeing another player, but then occasionally you will PvP. So I understand that, and that's kind of not what I'm talking about, though it does kind of lend itself to this list a little bit. What I'm talking about is a lot of the game is going to be you messing with your worker empire, which is almost entirely focused on just you versus the game. Fishing, AFK fishing is a huge thing, and yeah, I guess that plays a little bit into the auction house. We have to remember Black Desert Online's auction house works different than most games because it's like hard set with how much you can actually spend in, like, actually buy anything for or sell anything for. So it's basically like you versus the game. Just the players kind of supply the supplies. But then also there's trading, like literal trading, the trade systems where you go from town to town and you just take like certain items into different towns. And I think some of those stats, like how much something is worth in one town, is a little bit maybe based on players, but I actually haven't seen evidence for that. It just seems like it's kind of random, the game sets it itself. So a lot of the game, most of this game feels entirely focused on playing solo, and a lot of the mechanics are directly you versus the game instead of you interacting with any other players. And I know it's a PvP game, and there are chances of you running into other players sometimes, but it's nowhere like the wilderness in RuneScape. For the most part, Black Desert Online is a very solo-focused game, and you can entirely play this game single player. In fact, debatably, if Black Desert Online wasn't made as an MMO and was made as an action RPG, I don't know, it could have been like a Dragon's Dogma, a Witcher. It could have been probably a little bit better, debatably. Okay, so halfway on the list, I'm going to throw down Elder Scrolls Online. I think this one was a pretty obvious give here for the list. Now, most of Elder Scrolls Online is actually, it is an MMO, but the way that everything is really set up, it's really focused on presenting itself as if you are like the only character in this game that's actually like a hero, sort of. I mean, it starts out with such a genius idea. You know, every Elder Scrolls game, you gotta start as a prisoner. There's a bunch of other prisoners, you know, who have had their souls ripped apart or whatever, and then you all come down. But then from there, it kind of loses its MMO dumb. Everything's like, okay, you're the chosen one, you're the hero. Even if you're questing with a bunch of people, it always seems like they're talking to you specifically and other people are just bystanders. There's a lot of immersion breaking in this game, but if you play it as if it just happens to be an online Elder Scrolls, you kind of forget that it's an MMO. Kind of wish it wasn't an MMO, wish it was more like MMO Lite, but regardless, if you play it like that, you can actually have a lot of fun pretending it's single player, because the game itself is pretending it's single player, at least until you jump into dungeons randomly, which is very arcade, again, immersion breaking to an extent, or when you jump into the PvP, which you really feel the MMO then. But I have to say, a lot of the MMO content of Elder Scrolls, such as the open world events, are a little bit light and lacking. The PvP is interesting, but you gotta really get to grips with the combat system. And overall, Elder Scrolls Online just feels like it's in an in-between of an MMO and an Elder Scrolls Online game. And if you played any of those, you know, there's a lot of in between. So some give and take here, but you go into the mindset that it's a single player kind of MMO. If you can do that, just play the game like a single player game that happens to have online features. You can have a good time. All right, so number 2 on the list is probably a game that a lot of you guys thought of immediately when you saw the title of this video. It's going to be Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, I need to go deeper into it. I need to play the full campaign, but essentially this is one of the few MMO that actually has a dedicated campaign to it. Some interweave their campaigns between the multiplayer aspects, and most of it's like basically single player instance questing. But I really wanted to throw up Star Wars: The Old Republic here because it was one of the first that just had that clean cut, okay, we have the online portion, but you can just play this game online. And I think you can actually bring co-op into it. I haven't tried, but you could just play the cinematic linear campaign. And you could just run through it. Now, I think there's actually multiple for the different classes. Again, I haven't explored it too deeply, but this is just the one that really celebrated that aspect, and I'm totally cool with that. I'd rather have just a completely separate campaign that kind of explores the world, or you can use it as a tutorial, than perverting the MMO experience with a lot of that, you know, the awkward leveling, or, you know, just awkward storytelling, because it doesn't really work in an MMO setting, Elder Scrolls. But, you know, to an extent, it's kind of interesting that they do that. But then again, it could drop a lot of content from the MMO portion or the online portions. Maybe that just becomes like a grind fest. I don't know. It's give and take. I would love to know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, as well as should I go all the way through Star Wars: The Old Republic to play that as a free-to-play player? That's something that stopped me because I heard a lot of people say, it's not really worth it as a free-to-play, even though I thought it was really high quality. So let me know in the comments below if, as a free-to-play player, is it worth just running through that single-player experience, Star Wars: The Old Republic. And finally, the number 1 for top 10 single-player MMO, I'm gonna put Guild Wars 2. Mainly because Guild Wars 2 actually, episodically, has been extending their epic. The single-player campaign in this game, you can actually play it as free-to-play. You jump in, you get the full vanilla experience all the way up to slaying a dragon, which is super neato. And there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of really good voice acting, and I think some of the missions are engaging. There's definitely going to be a few parts where it actually, your heart is gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a little bit, but it's gonna be good stuff. Guild Wars 2 also kind of allows you to kind of make some decisions here and there. It all boils down to the same thing, but I'm just saying, it just kind of feels role-play, and I enjoyed that a lot, especially because of the good voice acting. Overall, Guild Wars 2, though, expending more resources into the living story than some people would like, and then less than others would like. That's going to be up to you if you really enjoy the living story, or if you're like, oh, I hate that they're taking it, they're taking away from the focus on guild versus guild, or the PvP, or I wish they would focus on dungeons. I get it, guys. Guild Wars 2, it does a lot good, but it doesn't do a lot great. It doesn't even do any one thing the best, aside from those open world bosses. But whatever. Guild Wars 2 is a very interesting game that to me had the most engaging single player experience. Even though I love its open world bosses and I love its open world questing, and I mostly did that, still Guild Wars 2 was engaging enough with its single player that it drew me in, especially because it is the living story. They do constantly add to it, but again, depending on how much you like it, it could annoy you that most of the updates are these kind of light, small little episodes. But I think if you're playing them all in one shot, it could be a huge amount of content to actually play through. So yeah, guys, jump on that living story if you can. But even as a free-to-play player, I do know that Guild Wars 2 single-player campaign is something. Go make some memories. But friends and family, that is going to be it for my single-player MMO list. I wish I could have gotten 10. You know, maybe I could put the Secret World or something on here for a game that's, I don't know. I've already made an RPG MMO list, but these are the ones that I think are genuinely fun to play solo, or generally like, you know, you with the mindset of playing it like a single-player game. These are the ones that are not only like allow you to do that, but it's actually fun to do that. So I just got 5 of them. Sorry about that. But much love though. Anyways, guys, if you want to see me playing lots of new games and like in live, in real person, actually reviewing games, then go check out twitch.tv/Skylent. But also, a lot of people who play MMOs really enjoy free-to-play games. You might want to check out my new channel called Free For All. Links in the description or in a comment. Also, I got a new channel called Skylent Hype. So if you like single-player sort of storied experiences, maybe you read manga, you like novels, and you watch a lot of shows, I'm reviewing a bunch of fantasy and sci-fi and cool shonen over on Skylent Hype as well. So I'm doing a lot, I'm being really creative, and I'm just trying to share those experiences with you guys, and hopefully you appreciate that. So anyways, guys, much love. My name's Skylent, and I'll see you in the next one.